All right, call to order the MPOJC Urbanized Area Policy Board meeting of Wednesday, September 20th, 2017. Number one, recognize alternates. We've got Paul Rossler here for Chris Lynch from the Iowa City Community School District and Kurt Fries for Mike Carberry for the Board of Supervisors. Okay. 1B, consider approval of the meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Donahue. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Set the next board meeting date, time, and location, November 15th, tentatively hosted by Johnson County. Does that work for most people? You had a chance to check? Okay. We will set it as the 15th. Kent will let us know for sure on location.
Correct.
When that goes out. Thank you. Item number 2, any public discussion on any item that is not on the agenda? Is anybody... Looks like we have all staff in the audience. All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, public hearing and consideration of a resolution adopting a revised MPOJC public participation plan.
Yes, thank you. Brad Newman, Assistant Transportation Planner. What you have here is our public participation plan for the MPO. This is something we're supposed to do every 5 years in conjunction with the long-range transportation plan. I think we missed last time because this document now is 2010, so it's still JCCOG instead of the MPO. So basically, this is a document that we use that specifies and formalizes our process in the planning. All the major planning documents we do. You'll see in the document itself, we list a number of larger planning documents that we do, such as the public participation plan, which is what you're looking at right now. You'll see that requires a 45-day notice, published notice in the newspaper, which we've done. Have not received any input from that. We also look at the long-range transportation plan and the amendments to that plan, the Transportation Improvement Program and amendments, the Passenger Transportation Plan, and the MPOJC Work Program. The requirements, they differ from plan to plan based on if they're state or federal requirements. They'll include public comment periods, notices, open houses, things like that. And what we've done here is basically clarified things a little bit, to make it more user-friendly than the last document in 2010. It was kind of hard to follow. You'll see at the end of the document there is a table that kind of is what we use when we go document by document and what is required. So that's what we're asking you to approve tonight. Technical Advisory Committee reviewed it, recommended approval. So we're asking for approval as well.
Any questions of Brad?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, Brad touched on this, but there really aren't any substantive changes to this. It's really just making an easier read and then making a nicer chart so that everyone can follow along with all the different programs that we work on.
All right, technically our agenda shows a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to address us on that? Yeah? I'll get to that. Close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
You can't do that.
We need somebody.
Second. Okay. Moved by the city, seconded by University Heights. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Pauline, come on up and join us. Yeah, we can grab a chair here somewhere. Yep. Item 4, transportation planning. I guess we've got Brad again. Is a public hearing and consideration of an amendment to the fiscal year 18 to 21 MPOJC Transportation Improvement Program TIP regarding the limits of Coralville's First Avenue reconstruction project.
Yes, this is an amendment that was requested by the city of Coralville. It's like the description said, it's basically clarifying the scope description of that project on First Avenue between 6th and 9th Street. Basically, there's more work being done on 6th than it needed to define those boundaries east and west of First Avenue. The language that you have in the memo comes from the DOT, so it's right. And they need this language corrected in order to proceed with the city of Coralville So we're requesting that you approve the amendment. TAC looked it over and unanimously was for it, so.
Yeah, the city of Coralville has actually received funding for this project twice through the MPO, through our Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. And when they came back the second time for the additional funding, that project scope had actually, well, it had crept just a little bit on a couple of the side streets. So this is just to make sure we've got the right language in the TIP.
Any questions of Brad or Kent? Okay. All right, I will open the public hearing. Anybody from the public who would like to address this?
We don't need a hearing on this one.
Oh, we did, oh, we've
That's
got,
the
hey,
next
we've got it, we've got it on the agenda, I'll do it. Yeah. Close the public hearing.
It does.
Move for
Oh, yes, we do.
resolution.
Move the amendment, okay.
Yeah, move resolution.
Second.
Okay, we've got a, by the city and second by Coralville. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Got that.
It did need the public hearing. I'm on to the next one already.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
No, 4B, consider adoption of the MPOJC transit performance targets. Go ahead, Brad.
And I think we've talked in the future, or in the past here, about transit asset management planning. It's a new requirement by the Federal Transit Administration of transit and the MPOs. So it basically asks transit and the MPOs to develop targets in 3 areas, and it's rolling stock, equipment, and facilities. We will use useful life and condition benchmarks that are provided by the Federal Transit Administration. It gets a little confusing here, but the transit agencies need to set their own performance targets, which they've done, which are included in your memo. I didn't put in the signed copies from each transit agency, but we have those. Basically, you'll see it's kind of a current condition report as a target. So they list based on useful life on rolling stock, and then most of the facilities are newer, so there's not a lot of issue there either. But the MPO has to have transit targets as well for the urbanized area. And so what we've decided to do is just adopt transit's targets as our own for the urbanized area, which is fine with the DOT. It's the transit targets will become part of the Transit Asset Management Plan, which is required by the FTA. Those are due next October in 2018. So we'll be working with them and providing 1 plan, not 3, which is kind of nice, but that'll include an inventory and some planning in that document for those folks. What we're doing here when we adopt the transit targets for the urbanized areas, we will submit those to the Iowa Department of Transportation, and they will keep those on file. So those will not be submitted directly to FTA. If FTA wants to see it, they will ask DOT or us for that. But I think this is what most of the MPOs are doing. They're just adopting the local, unless you want to set your own targets, which I
Why
guess
bother?
why would we want to do that? So that's where we're at. Like I said, we'll be working with the transit agencies, getting that plan put together for next year. Just saw a webinar on it this afternoon on how to do the inventory, and it's quite very extensive. So we're just lucky we don't have rail yet, so it gets even worse. TAC did look this over and recommended approval, so staff is requesting approval.
Okay. Any questions of Brad? Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Iowa City, seconded by the university. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
And I do have 2 documents for you to sign before you leave,
Yep.
so
We got
thank
those.
you.
All right, thanks, Brett. 4C, update on potential federal highway administration funding rescissions affecting MPOJC planning funds. Kent?
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick update. Kent Ralston, Director. The Iowa DOT had notified us here a while back that the Federal Highway Administration had rescinded about $74,000 worth of Iowa's PL, or planning funds, as they're known. The rescission was a result of the 2017 Appropriations Act and accounted for about 4% of the state's total PL funds. Just by way of background, the planning funds of the PL funds that we receive pay for about a third of the MPO's budget. It's about $200,000 a year. And maybe even more importantly than that is that the total funding rescission across the entire state was almost $11.5 million. So that's across all programs. The DOT covered the loss of those PL funds to the MPO this year and essentially held us harmless for 2018. But from what I'm hearing, there's already discussions of further rescissions in 2019 and beyond. So even though this rescission would have amounted to maybe $10,000 for our MPO, give or take, it does concern me that this will either continue on for future years and the cumulative effect will affect our budget a lot more than it does this year. And or that rescission amount might actually increase. So whenever this sort of thing happens, I like to keep the board apprised. It's obviously concerning to me because transportation funding is already critical and hard to get as it is. So I'll continue to monitor that. I don't have a good feeling for what will happen, but I can only imagine that amount's going to grow and will probably continue on into the future. So we like to hold everyone's assessments level or even reduce them as we have in the past few recent years. This is the kind of thing that if it does, accumulate and become an issue, it may affect assessments someday. I hope it doesn't get there. But anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. But at this time, I just plan to keep you all apprised.
Okay. Any questions for Kent? All right. Thank you. We'll move on to let me make sure I'm in the right place. 3D, update on the potential for a federal aid swap in Iowa whereby state funding could replace federal funding for road bridge projects. Kent?
Yeah, thanks. So this is an issue that's been discussed on and off for several years at the Iowa legislature. Some of you may have been following it. This year, House File 203, which was signed into law, now permits the Iowa Transportation Commission to allow what's commonly referred to as a federal aid swap. Generally, it's a process whereby city and county road and bridge funds or projects that would have formerly been funded with federal funding, that funding would then be swapped with state funding with the general goal of finding efficiencies. So whether that's in less permitting, because these aren't federal funds, they're now state funds, whether that is different bidding requirements. It could have an effect on disadvantaged business enterprise regulations, Davis-Bacon wages, Buy America Act. All those things are affected by that because those are all through the federal government. So generally speaking, the DOT is trying to find some efficiencies with these. I actually went to Ames yesterday for an MPO directors meeting where we talked about this fairly extensively. The upshot is that the DOT will try to have a full draft plan to us this fall yet for review, and then they're hoping to actually implement the swap if possible next year. I think from what I'm hearing, it will be an opt-in or opt-out. It won't be project by project. So if we choose to opt into the swap, it'll be, I don't know if it's going to be an annual agreement or if it's just until further notice, but I think we'll be able to opt in or opt out. I don't have a good feeling for what the technical advisory committee how they'll see that, and the same goes with this board. So okay. I plan to keep you all apprised. I don't have a lot of the information yet, as the DOT doesn't either. I actually attached in your packet a email from Stu Anderson with systems planning at the DOT. It's got his email address in there and some information about what they're looking for at this point. They've started stakeholder meetings. Some MPOs are represented, ours is not. However, Scott Sovers with the City of Iowa City is on that committee as well. They were trying to keep the numbers down. There's just too many MPOs and RPAs. So we do have some local representation, but I think there's more questions than answers at this point. We will see if they have that draft plan yet this fall. It wouldn't surprise me if that bled over into next year, but again, I'll keep you apprised. And I would think at some point, within the next year, we'll probably have some long and healthy discussions, I would imagine, about the federal aid swap.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Kent? All right.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4E, an update on the I380, I80 Corridor Projects.
Yeah, I didn't put an actual memo in your packet on this, but there is an attachment. It's the Iowa DOT news release with regards to reconstruction of I80 and Herbert Hoover Highway. So the Department of Transportation held a public information meeting the Tuesday before last, September 12th, to discuss some design alternatives with the public. And in your packet, I attached the two design alternatives, which did not reproduce well. The two designs that they're talking about, the first is sort of a modified diamond interchange, kind of your typical interchange. And the other is a much more interesting design where they would actually have roundabouts on either side of the Herbert Hoover Bridge, where the on and off ramps meet. Those are the two that were discussed at the public meeting, and I don't want to put Kathy on the spot, but if Kathy has anything to add, I'm sure she was at the public meeting.
Would you come up to the Kathy, could you come up to the microphone? Thank you.
The idea for the roundabouts actually came from the county.
Yeah, that's
So it was
great.
a great design.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know, again, I don't want to put you on the spot, Kathy, but what's the next step in the process?
We have a public comment period that'll go for a couple weeks. We'll take the comments, review them at staff level, and then feed that back into management for a decision on the type of interchange.
Great. And this is on the 5-year program?
It is in 2021.
2021. Okay.
Thank you, Kathy.
Any questions for Kent on this one? All right, well, moving right along, 4F, we are down to the update from Iowa City staff on significant community projects. Jason Howell. Hi, Jason.
Good afternoon. Jason Hobble, City Engineer for the City of Iowa City. I promise to keep this brief. It's mostly pictures, so should go quick. Just to give you a brief update on some of the major projects going on right now within Iowa City. These are at various stages, but again, just to kind of give you an update. First one here, Davenport Street brick reconstruction. So this reconstructed 2 blocks of Brick Street. So that was Davenport Street from Clinton Street to Lynn Street. That recently opened up back to traffic. And again, it was really just replacing the existing brick surface. It improved the base of the roadway, so it'll make it last much, much longer than it did previously. Hebel Avenue reconstruction. This is the road that goes out to the landfill. This one is currently under construction. This one will then tie into IWV Road, which the county has been working on, and that'll not only have they been working on it, but that will also continue. As many of you know, we have a joint project for IWV Melrose piece in the CIP as well. So I think for schedule for that one, we're looking at probably completion yet this fall, probably in the next month or 2.
IWV is paving next week.
For that portion of it? Good. Bicycle master plan, obviously most or all of you know that we recently adopted a new bicycle master plan. A component of that and certainly a common topic of discussion has been the 4-lane to 3-lane conversions here in Iowa City. We have a number of those that have happened or are in the process of happening. Just kind of some highlights there. The First Avenue 4-lane to 3-lane conversion shown here was done in conjunction with the grade separation project. That one is complete, open to traffic, and seems to be doing pretty well. The next one will be likely the Burlington-Clinton intersection improvements, which will include a 4-lane to 3-lane conversion of Clinton Street. We had bid that earlier this year. Unfortunately, we didn't receive any bids, so we're looking at bidding that this fall, likely start construction first thing next spring, and hopefully get that one taken care of. Similar to that, the Burlington-Madison intersection improvement project, that one looks to add turn lanes. Originally had include medians as part of the original design. We are currently in the process of finalizing a contract with a consultant to basically pick that design back up and move forward with that project. As part of that, we likely will look to see if medians are still what we want to do with that project. I think a lot of the goals are still the same. As far as pedestrians and bicycles and just getting everybody through that portion of the corridor, but just seeing if medians are still the way we want to do it. So like I said, design will start shortly on that one. I think construction was scheduled for 18. We'll have to see where that ends up depending on how much change happens during the design. That may slide, but again, at this point, that's where we're at. And then I guess the other one I kind of wanted to mention was Gilbert Street. As many of you know, we're currently in the study phase for that one to see if a 4-lane to 3-lane conversion is the route we want to go, or if there might be other alternatives that might be a better solution. But again, that study is ongoing. So on to the I would call them the big 2, kind of the ones we get most of the questions about. The first one being riverfront crossings. Off to the right here, you'll see kind of the master plan for the park. For those of you that aren't as familiar, this is the site of the old North Wastewater Treatment Plant that is scheduled to be the Riverfront Crossings Park. There's 2 phases that we're currently working on. Phase 1 looks to focus on the constructed wetlands, the stream corridor work, as well as most of the grading and trail work for the park. That is currently underway. If you haven't been out there recently, I would encourage you to do so. It looks a lot different than it did even just a few months ago. So they've been doing a lot of work. My understanding is the pedestrian bridge is supposed to be in here pretty much any time now. So I think that will, again, be a big change and really start to show what that park's going to be like. The second phase will be the natural play area. That one was recently bid, working on finalizing that contract and getting that started. That's what's pictured here in the middle, and that's really will be a portion of the park. And again, that focuses on kind of a natural play area for people to use. Final one, Gateway project. Obviously, I'm assuming everybody is familiar with this one at this point. So where we're at with this one, as a reminder, it was kind of 3 projects in one. It was the sewer main, it was the Park Road Bridge, and then it was elevation of Dubuque Street. Currently, traffic is on a portion of what will be the final southbound lanes. The crossover is currently in front of Mayflower. Hopefully around the Thanksgiving timeframe, we will shift that crossover down closer to Park Road and utilize the majority of the southbound lanes. And then that would take us through the winter. The bridge construction obviously is ongoing. You can see a lot of steel going up right now. The interesting thing about that is they really are building almost 2 bridges. They essentially build a temporary bridge and then they build a permanent bridge off of that. So the steel is really just in order to enable them to build the permanent structure. But obviously, again, if you haven't been out there recently, I would encourage you to do so. It's pretty amazing to see all the work that's going on out there. And then usually the question is, when's it going to be done? That's tough to answer. I'll give you the usual disclaimer that it depends on a lot of things, weather being a big one. If we continue to get favorable weather, especially through the winter, I think the goal would be to have people on the permanent lanes and kind of have it open at least to traffic by start of school next year. Again, there would be work to do, but I think that would be the goal at this point. With that, that's it. Hopefully short, sweet.
Any questions for Jason?
All right.
Yeah, I will just comment on the Gateway project. I mean, that's a huge, huge undertaking. And to see the progress that we've made in the last year and a half, roughly, since we started with that, I think it was a really big eye-opener for people as they saw those southbound lanes getting higher and higher and higher, and now that people are actually driving on half of it, and you can really come down that slope for the crossover right now. But I think people are getting a better idea of what it's really going to look like. I hope that people are feeling better about what it is going to actually look like when it's done. I think the wall along the river looks really good. So it's going to be exciting to have that finished. So.
I think it's funny that I remember when they first put in the temporary paving, and it was basically the same elevation as the current paving, and we got numerous phone calls saying, I thought it would be higher. And so I think people are really starting to see it now that you're actually on that final elevation.
Oh, yeah. Well, and even when you get on what are the northbound lanes and you're to your right, it's way up above you, and you realize how high the rest of it's going to be, so you really get that sense. So it's the biggest most expensive engineering project we've ever done in Iowa City? Correct. Okay. So it's a big one. All right. Any other questions for Jason? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other business? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That's my job.
So moved.
Moved by the Iowa City, seconded by the county. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
I can call in.